For Reimagined Futures and Howard University News Service, I'm Morgan Minix. Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, Hulu, Paramount Plus. The list of names seems almost endless, as does the money. Streaming services have a collective market value of over $200 billion. The COVID-19 pandemic saw a boom in both streaming services and viewers with free time. Patrick Jagoda is a professor at the University of Chicago.
As of early 2021, which is where we are right now, Netflix has about 200 million subscribers worldwide and has an incredibly high operating income and has gone billions of dollars into debt, but has also created this fundamentally new model that has become even more salient during the pandemic.
For companies like Netflix, this meant huge gains, adding over 15 million subscribers in the early parts of lockdown. The fledgling Peacock, a service representing the holdings of NBC Universal, struggled in its first year, losing over 914 million, according to Comcast filings with the SEC. There is also the ill-fated Quibi, a streaming startup with a backing of 1.75 billion, hoping to lure in audiences with short chapters optimized for smartphone screens. Quibi shuttered its doors only 6 months after launching. The streaming service, which attracted talent ranging from Kevin Hart to Ice Cube to Steven Spielberg to Jennifer Lopez, failed to catch viewers' eyes. Some of Quibi's original programming has found a new home with the Roku channel. In contrast, an example of undoubted success in pandemic streaming is Disney Plus. Disney Plus is a streaming service responsible for the holdings of the Walt Disney Company and was met with immediate success on its launch. In the little over a year since, Disney Plus is nearing the 100 million subscriber mark and recently instituted a price hike. There are also the niche and more boutique streaming services like Mubi and the Criterion Channel that cater to specific audiences. An example of success for streamers of independent films can be seen with IFC Films Unlimited. IFC reported a 50% increase in subscribers from the beginning of lockdowns last year. While these developments are promising for streaming services across the board, this success has not been shared by all content providers. The huge post-pandemic boom of streaming is contrasted with the crash movie theaters are currently undergoing. Dr. Aaron Hill is an associate professor of media and popular culture at the University of California, San Diego.
I think COVID introduces these weird factors. I think it helps sort of exaggerate and accelerate some of what's going on already, which is that there are more opportunities, there are more TV shows, there are more films being made generally. However, there are fewer opportunities to make a good living doing production work.
The movie theater industry was one of the hardest hit by COVID-19. With theaters closed, films delayed, and capacities limited, cinemas both large and small struggled to make it through the year. AMC narrowly escaped bankruptcy due to a last-minute cash injection to the tune of $917 million, and many smaller theaters were assisted by the $900 billion COVID-19 relief bill, which provided $15 billion to small movie theaters and other venues. The lack of cinemas has been a catalyst for never-before-seen change. HBO Max exists as a unique example of the confluence of streaming and traditional cinema rollouts. HBO Max took on all of its parent company, Warner Media's major motion picture slate scheduled to be released in theaters.
They're just going to dump those movies on HBO Max, and I feel like it's like such a bold, it's frustrating and it's bold because it's going to help kill theaters, but they're already going to be dying. And then also, it feels like it would be a crazy move any other year because you're losing all the exclusive windows and the long tail and all that stuff. But it makes sense to me because they're basically getting people addicted to their service.
But what do all these big names and big numbers and big changes mean for those working in the entertainment industry, especially people of color whose fight against systematic racism has come to the fore in recent years? Dr. Christina Baker, an associate professor of history and critical race and ethnic studies at the University of California, Merced, believes streaming is a continuation of what Black artists have done for a long time.
I think when I see the different streaming options now, it's certainly a current example of the ways that we as Black people have been able to harness the kinds of technology or the kind of things that are here, even if it hasn't always been, and often has not been something that's been easily made available to us. But we've thought of ways to creatively utilize those resources.
Some artists of color have seen a newfound ability to receive funding for their work. This, however, is not shared across the board.
When I hear a lot of the stories from Black filmmakers, that there continues to be a feeling that there's not always openness to hearing our stories or their stories.
Dr. Baker also cited Ava DuVernay as an example of a filmmaker of color who created on her own terms and eventually received studio backing. DuVernay is one of many filmmakers of color who have used new media to parlay their nascent creative endeavors into real bona fide industry standards. Another example is Issa Rae's Awkward Black Girl, which eventually parlayed her deal with HBO and her own show with Insecure. Professor Mark A. Reed teaches film at the University of Florida.
And Issa Rae, and there's another Black woman who you never get this side of what womanhood is about unless you have these diverse types of Blacks who are producing, writing, and sponsoring these types of films. Issa Rae is going to help other women like her.
Similar to Issa Rae's use of YouTube as a platform for her videos, Lilly Singh managed to turn her widely popular online presence into a late-night TV show on NBC called A Little Late with Lilly Singh. She also became the first person of South Asian descent to host a late-night network show. These examples of figures who use new media to launch careers differ from those who chased a more traditional route. Dr. Hill cited Ryan Coogler's success with Fruitvale Station, the eventual direction of Black Panther, as a textbook example of artists of color being given a well-deserved opportunity and making the most out of it. Coogler's Fruitvale Station was a small independent picture that picked up buzz around the awards circuit and eventually helped him land his next, bigger projects. Coogler's eventual ascension to superhero director is an anomaly according to Dr. Hill. While there are many instances of directors going from independent films to superhero films, most of the directors making this jump are white men. Dr. Hill also spoke about another traditional route many writers of color take via the Diversity Writers Program. This program presents its own set of issues, with many of the participants being younger writers of color who may not speak up for fear of being viewed as a problem. The program also employs many writers whose parents work within the industry. Even with the problems presented by the Diversity Writers Program, people of color have seen an overall rise in employment opportunity. Numbers released by the Writers Guild of America shows a steady increase in the number of underrepresented groups holding employment in writers' rooms. Year over year, more women and people of color have found themselves with jobs in television. Last year, underrepresented writers saw a 16.6% increase in representation. When examining the streaming landscape, similar examples of people of color using new media and old changing systems to make waves in the industry can be found. These examples illustrate how the billion-dollar industry of streaming intends to include diversity in platform creators of color who create on their own terms. While these aforementioned numbers are up, and examples can be pointed to even after a pandemic that ravaged some quarters of the industry, Dr. Baker believes that the true power to make change remains in the hands of those filmmakers of color.
It's certainly been when we've seen any sort of sustained progress. It comes from the Black artists, Black filmmakers themselves, deciding I'm going to really just create.
For Reimagined Futures and Howard University News Service, I'm Morgan Minix.